Cool beans, right? Hello,
Hold
welcome
on,
back
sorry.
to. Oh
Sorry.
no,
Wait.
no, no,
No,
no!
wait.
I had a great intro.
No, it's cool because I'm hijacking the intro this week.
What?
It's just not cricket podcast. I am driving this podcast from, well, for
Hold
today.
on, I gotta leave.
You can say you can be the passenger. It's fine.
Oh no, yeah, go
You're
on.
my
Sorry, go ahead.
co-host. I'm
Ah,
I'm Jamie. He's Matt.
hello.
I don't know how to do this. I wasn't fully prepared to. But yeah, on the eve of the IPL starting,
Oh yeah, buzzing.
yes, I thought it would be really nice to not talk about it. We've said before, like, there's so much cricket going on. There needs to be a break at some point, just for the players' well-being, and I think for our well-being. Like we've discussed before, like we were going to talk about the Rings of Power this episode. So this is our full episode, not cricket.
We're mitigating tiny bit of cricket news.
Oh yeah, that will be the not segment for this week. But the not will be in like it will be in relation to Rings of Power. So
I can try.
this is this is going to be chaos.
Yes.
Are you excited? Like frightened,
Oh
terrified,
boy, I'm
scared?
loving that all my notes I got were about cricket. It's
Uh,
lucky the IPL goes on for 2 months, so we can have a whole 2 months of not cricket.
I mean, I told you, I think it was yesterday. I was like, I've got a good
Hmm.
idea. We should
Yeah,
do an IPL special,
yeah,
call it that, title it that, and just not talk
yeah.
about it. And then we
Oh,
release it on
100%.
Saturday, which is April Fool's Day.
That is, yeah.
And
So if
we're
you're listening to this, you have just got hijack jinxed.
including you, which
Oh, including me. I've got
I'm
a bit. We'll do It's Just Not Cricket at the end. If you want to be here for cricket chat, I'll put a timestamp and you can listen to the cricket chat. But
but
to
no one's
begin
here for
with,
that. No one is here for
oh,
that.
no one's here
Like,
for that. They're here for Rings of Power, which came out like
exactly.
friggin' 6 months ago.
I know, right? I mean, we've been saying
So,
we're gonna
okay, yeah.
do a whole like retrospective on it.
I
But
gotta try and remember what happened.
I know, right? At least I've got some notes to
Well, I'm
like
banking
into.
on you, the spreadsheet.
So if my
Happy April Fools.
laptop.
Listen,
Well,
but
so
I'll
I
follow. I'll follow your Rings of Power lead
cool.
wherever you take this.
So I thought we'd do it
Yeah,
like three segments, like a before the series started, a during the series.
yeah,
We talked about it enough, so we don't have to go too much into it. And then we can do something
no,
we've not done before, like looking at what we think season two and the other series will
yeah.
happen. So do you remember like when the first announcement for the Rings of Power came out? Because I don't.
No, no. I remember very vaguely the talk about Amazon getting the rights, and everyone worried that they were just going to do the Lord of the Rings films again.
Mhm.
Um, but I think the first thing I vaguely remember is when they did like the little map reveals. Do you remember
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And little tiny little bits of like, oh, and the map is slowly being, oh, it's Numenor, oh, it's Second Age. So that's I quite like those little reviews reveals. I thought they were quite cute. Then they did a big old cast, not cast, a big crew video
Mhm.
thing. All the crew people who are going to be working on it. Um, and then not a lot happened, did it? I guess until we actually got posters and stuff, I suppose. But I mean, the main thing I remember most is the map.
Yeah, like I remember you sending me the map, and it
Yeah,
had either some sort of the ring verse or like quoting Galadriel's intro from the film. Of like that kind of already sets it in the second age. From then, which is kind of exciting because it's not done before, but also scary because they have almost no material to work on, and that did not show at all.
no, they did it perfectly.
Yeah, I think one of like the very early concerns with it was, which was like Amazon came out and said they were looking for their own Game of Thrones, which then only a couple of months later they
Yeah.
acquired the rights to Rings, and so people were like, oh. shit, they're going to turn Rings into some porn-esque sexploitation parody.
Yeah,
But like, I kind of think that was a bit misconstrued anyway. I think they meant
I think so.
their own Game of Thrones in the sense that of like cultural, social significance,
And
and like,
scale, like
yeah,
this big thing.
like
Yeah.
something that would like stick in the zeitgeist and people's memories. And like, I think you can tell from us doing this like 5, 6 months on from it having finished its first season, that's not happened.
Topical. Yeah. Yeah, like what happened. But I always think, little side note, little footnote, whatever you want to call it. I always think anything is going to run into problems as soon as they want to overachieve. Um, like saying you want to be the next cultural Game of Thrones is a saying, like DC wanting to be the next MCU or something, or or something wanting to be the next Harry Potter. I think as soon as you almost taint a project with something else,
Mhm.
you're always going to be playing catch up and you're never going to fulfill the expectations of a brand or something that people love and are really invested by, like the T20 Blast, and then trying to sell the 100.
I don't like how you're trying to put cricket into this already. We've been derailed.
But that's I think always been my problem with anything because it's always going to be this is going to be the next Star Wars, this is going to be next Harry
Mhm.
Potter. It's like just be your own thing, and then well, I'm going to talk about some of that stuff later. But like in other adaptations, but yeah, just trust in yourself. Don't try and prelude to anything else. Just maybe start off small and then grow as you go along. I think that's usually what I think is best. But yeah, that's just my little footnote. You can
Yeah,
carry on.
no, like you said with the Marvel and DC connection, DC tried to just jump in with
Jump the
establishing a
gun.
Justice League from the start, and it
Yeah,
like Rings of Power kind of did that, trying to introduce so many like different story arcs, so many
yeah.
characters, just like the very first episode of Game of Thrones. If you are going to compare it to Game of Thrones, it had what, two story beats? It had the stuff
Very
happening
small
at
opening.
Winterfell
Very, yeah,
and like Dany's plot,
yeah,
and then it sort of diverges from there, and that's cool. You get to like you're introduced to all the characters in a very small area before they
yeah.
diverge off. Whereas Rings, you've diverged off on like 4 spots at once. Then Galadriel diverts her own way off.
Oh boy, it's all coming
Ah,
back.
yeah, I know, right? And we're not even on
Uh,
that segment.
yeah,
But yeah, like the early promo stuff was kind of cute. It was like the hand posters. That was I think that was a really fun
that was
thing
that
to
was
do because
yes. I would say that was yeah,
it gets like audience involvement because you get trying to figure out who's who in that, who which
yeah,
actor is which hand.
yeah. True. I think the only problem with that, I think sometimes it was kind of showcasing maybe the costumes and the props and stuff aren't the best in some cases. Like a lot of them felt a bit cosplay or a bit like I don't know, unauthentic. Like there's one which had a sword hilt with a tiny little miniature city and stuff on it. But I can't remember who that was. But it was sort of like sometimes it felt like some of the costumes looked good and really exciting and stuff. I think Galadriel's in particular looked good before you really knew the context. Um, but yeah, some just felt a bit cheapish, I guess. And when because again, you're going to have to compare. Why don't you compare, I guess, to like Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings and Hobbit to an extent. Some of the props and costumes they have in there, are exceptional. They're, almost half what the story is. So when you're comparing, you feel like is some of this all right? But I think it's a good way of doing it rather than being like, here is your cast face, here it is in this Galadriel. I think it was like you say, I think it's a fun way of like introducing things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I think the promotional aspect was fun, but like you say, it was a like early look into how cheap they were going to make a $1 billion show look. Because like I think that a lot of the interior sets, a lot of the costumes were very just bland. They just
generic.
a lot of the fabric look just
Yeah,
like they just stitch some new stuff together. But and this might be going into your like adaptation comparisons a bit. But like you look at House of the Dragon or you look at The Last of Us, and a lot of the clothes look creased. They look a bit dirty. They look worn in. But like the Rings of Power stuff, it just looked like they grabbed some basic local theatre production clothes and were like,
yeah.
go on, here you go, Morphid, this will do, yeah.
Just looks, fresh and stuff, and it's from my working at a film studio tour days. Distressing a costume is very important because because when you distress it, you're telling the story. You know, um, I guess for example, I can use my tour example. Like I used to work at the Warner Bros. Studio tour London, the making of Harry Potter. In case you didn't know, one of like Harry's costumes in the last film in the Battle of Hogwarts gets there. There's about seven different iterations of
Mhm.
the costume he wore. Daniel Radcliffe and Harry Potter. So you start off with the first costume, which he gets changed into after the Gringotts heist, which is all clean and it's fresh and everything. And as the battle goes on, the costume gets more and more distressed. So you would, you know, get a lighter and burn singes a bit, so you get hit by spells or something like that, or you would, literally get a cheese grater and like grate off some of the edges. So he's been rolling around scuffing. And you do seven iterations. So each point of the battle is getting more and more worn and
Mhm.
used. So when you're watching on a film, it's just it makes sense in the narrative of the costume that his costume is literally falling apart as he's going along, which tells a story in itself. But someone like Galadriel, and her armor especially, I would imagine that she would have worn that armor for years and years and years.
Mhm.
Um, hundreds of years being an elf. And I know that, you get the very fanciest armor, but it just always looked sleek. It always looked clean. It always didn't have any kind of
Mhm.
dents or scratches or, you know, something that would tell that she is a leader of the whatever armies. Something that she has been in a battle. It just looks like, oh, she just put it on. That's new. Is it
Yeah,
new every time then? Like that was my problem. None of it felt distinguished or that they've been through something. Like I don't know, with like Gandalf in Fellowship of the Ring, Gandalf the Grey, you can see that his robe has been worn and
yeah,
traveled, and it's not like he's just grabbed it on from the local tailor or something.
yeah.
It's like he's been about, he's traveled Middle Earth, whilst Galadriel, who's supposedly this fighter who's traveled, who's seen so much and is on this quest of vengeance, doesn't look like she's been hit by a sword once, and it's sort of like, well, it's not very believable. So it's a tiny thing, but those tiny things just I think make a film or a TV show when you put that level of detail in.
Yeah, I mean, it completely breaks your immersion, doesn't it? Like when you've got
Yeah,
Harry's cloak getting like steadily worse off, you don't notice that as you're watching
not yeah,
because it's
not at all.
authentic to what's happening within the
Yeah,
story or Gandalf's cloak. You don't notice in that moment, but you notice when something's off. You
you
notice
notice when they don't do it.
exactly.
100%.
You notice when Isildur's breastplate like comes up to here and has massive man boobs, but and like clearly
Yeah,
doesn't fit him.
yeah,
Like you
yeah,
notice when Galadriel wears some armor that she's had for years that looks like she's just been given it on set that day,
yeah, yeah,
and that like that takes you out of the story completely, and that like makes you analyze the show more and look at its faults and
100%.
like
Yeah,
and good points as well. But you're not watching it, you're not
no,
completely
takes you out. Yeah,
by the
takes you out of
show.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And then I think the trailers were a weird sort of fate. I think I remember a spell where like the first couple kind of got me a bit more optimistic about it. And then they like started releasing a weird sort of, one that,
they do a pop song
yep,
over
yep,
the top.
there
Yeah,
was, yep, some weirdy like YA fantasy like
yeah,
pop song over one. And I was like, that's when you're beginning to think they're not
yeah,
marketing this the Lord of the Rings fans. They're
No,
marketing this for anyone.
I think so.
It doesn't. It sounds worse than it is because I I think they went about making the show trying to put like readers and non-readers on the same level, which
Mm,
inherently they aren't.
mhm.
It's not a bad thing to have not read the book, or it's not any
No.
better to have read more, but that like leads you into trying to like balance that together in the show, and by trying to keep things the readers know about like secret from them. You're trying to keep things like Sauron's identity, for example,
Yeah.
a secret. When like if you just give him his, if you just call him Anatar, the book readers are like, oh, fuck, I know who that is, and
Yeah, so they've got to try and triple
non-watchers
guess everyone.
are just
Yeah.
like, I don't know, that's just some bloke called Anatar. But
Yeah.
whereas like again, comparing it to Thrones, they didn't do that at all.
No.
Like when they started to become thin on book material, they did, and they changed some storylines that like very early seasons are very faithful adaptations.
Because
Whereas
there's a reason that these things have worked and make sense. And I don't understand why you want to be duped as an audience. Like, surely it's the same with like The Last of Us. I mean, that's more adaptation stuff, but like pretty much all of The Last of Us, what happens in the show is pretty much what happens in the game. Um,
yeah,
and for the most part, and like surely it's a thing like you're seeing something that you know being adapted and that you enjoy, and it's like there's the thrill of that. It's not like you're gonna have, they changed some stuff in, I don't know, Harry Potter, for example, and Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, but like um at the crux of it, they are still the same. Like there's a reason why those
yeah,
things are the way they are. That's why they've been written that way. Like I don't understand why you feel like the showrunners feel a necessity and a need to be like, oh, that obviously doesn't work. What can I do instead to make it more exciting for the casuals or the people who already know who Anatar is? It's like that's not the point. It's surely more interesting for a person who knows Anatar is Sauron to watch that play out with the back of your mind being like, oh, this is
yeah.
interesting to see how he's duping the characters and fooling those who don't know who are watching the show. And like I think that's more interesting. And then you have to be more clever about it and really portray how, I don't know, deceiving Sauron is,
Mhm.
by getting a really good actor who can really deceive everyone perfectly. And I don't think they got anywhere near that.
That's not the like rag on like Charlie Vickers as hard
No, I think he's
either,
probably
because
one of the best things of the series, if I'm perfectly honest.
yeah, I mean, like just a note on the acting, I think it was generally pretty
Generally fine.
solid. Like
Fine.
they were working with some fucking trash at some point.
Like the bit when I feel like you disagree. I think we discussed about it before, but the sequence where they reveal that Halbrand is Sauron, I think was is it Charlie Vickers? Did you say his name
Yeah,
is?
I think so.
Okay, I think his performance in that sequence is really good, and or I feel like I can buy that. I don't feel like necessarily what he's given is great, but like I quite like the line. I've been awake since the breaking of the
Mhm.
first silence and that kind of stuff, and some of the stuff on the raft I enjoy. Um, I like seeing this character really flip and then go full Sauron mode. But then they put him in like a hoodie at the end of Mordor and stuff. It's like, well, surely it's better just to leave him and you don't know where he's gone. But that's the end of the series of all that. But I think that some of the stuff is good, and when they get decentish stuff, it can be like, oh, I feel something towards this, but yeah, I think it's just completely overstuffed with garbage. It should have been.
It is.
This is. I don't know. I don't want to derail your thing, but in my
No,
opinion, it should
it's
have been
already
two
derailed. I don't
good,
know where we are.
good. Well, my opinion, I think it should have just been two storylines. Just and you have um the dwarven storyline, which I think is by far the best of the show by a country mile, and then you have just the if you're sticking with Halbrand and Galadriel, you're just having their two's storyline, which is vaguely what they did. But I think you ditch the Southland stuff. You ditch all the other nonsense in Numenor with Isildur's sister and Isildur being a little like crybaby teenager. You ditch all the Harfoot stuff, and you just have two storylines. They're the two you follow, and then you don't have to worry about filling loads of guff in between. That would be my opinion. And then you can kind of interweave them at the end, which they kind of sort of do, but it just feels a bit cheap. Sorry, I'll let you try and get some
Uh,
structure.
I was just going to say, I completely agree with that. I think
Yeah.
the main like theme of the second age is the elves starting to be corrupted,
Hmm.
and they are like inherently linked to both Numenor and the dwarves. Like through
Hmm.
Numenor, like Elrond's brother was the first Numenorian king, and like through the Numenorians dying, they eventually become like pissed off at the Valar and the El, and like I wouldn't say necessarily jealous of the elves, but they feel like they should be getting immortality as well. So that turns them against the Valar, and they go into becoming, instead of the faithful, they become the kingsmen. And that's because of their relationship with the elves,
Hmm.
which we get absolutely fucking none of.
Yeah.
The closest we get to a reason for the Numenorians not liking the elves is they took our jobs.
Yeah. Yeah. That was great.
You've seen one fucking elf in the
Yeah. Yeah. That was
in
cool.
how long? Oh God. And then
Love
you've
that.
got you can have the dwarf storyline because
Hmm.
Celebrimbor like befriends Navi the dwarf of
Hmm.
Khazad-dûm to like make some shit. He makes the door of
Yeah.
Durin before
Yeah.
some bloke called Anatar shows up and
Yeah.
rips into some shit.
Yeah.
I and I think you need to have like a visual representation of the Númenóreans' short lifespan. I think
Hmm.
it was a bit of a cop out to just jump straight in to almost the end point because you're
100%.
not,
It's Isildur's about. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, because you're not getting that the feeling of the men at all. You're
No.
not feeling their disdain or their discontent because you're just there. But if you show through like an entire season,
Hmm.
these same elves are around every episode. For every like 2 or 3 episodes,
Yeah.
you're casting a new actor for a new Númenórean king and
That's
new
cool.
Númenóreans. I
Yeah.
think that's very jarring for the audience, but I think that like evokes
Makes sense.
a really
Yeah.
strong reaction, and it like it puts you in the Númenórean shoes. It shows you why they go
Yeah.
down the route
And
of
yeah.
faithful and will eventually, spoiler alert, be corrupted by Sauron and do some weird shit like human sacrifice and trying to attack the Valar.
So cute. But then it also puts you in the perspective if you're doing these two storylines of elves and dwarves, it really puts you in the, you know, shoes of an elf that, it's basically a man's lifespan for an elf is a blink of an eye, basically, isn't it?
Yeah,
And when you go from episode to episode, then it's like, well, that's basically their experience, I suppose. And I think that's quite a unique way of telling the story.
and
If
like
you're going to be focusing on the elves.
even in relation to the dwarfs as well, like we see
Mm,
Elrond and Durin's interaction when Durin's like, it's been 20 years, so
yeah.
that's like 12 minutes for you, but it's been 20
Yeah.
years for me.
Yeah, and they
Like,
could have done something really well with that. They could have had a Durin and Elrond in the first episode, and the next episode is 20 years ago.
yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah,
that small conversation, like concisely puts together like what the conflict between the elves and the
yeah,
Númenóreans should have been between an elf and a dwarf,
yeah.
but they just do nothing with it.
It's so good.
They
It's
just go
it's frustrating
down.
because I, there's so much wasted potential, isn't there? That's the problem. I think with what is there's so much like they try to skip to the good bit very straight away, and it's like the best shows build and adapt and grow. You can't just expect to be at your end game from right off the bat. So I think the problem is that there's so much wasted potential, and most of the time it is the build up, which is the most good bit of the storytelling. But yeah, love it.
Yeah, but right, no idea where we are.
Well, I've not got a spreadsheet,
No,
so it's all on you.
I mean, I guess that covers the before.
I said, well, we've delved a bit in before. I think that's we covered everything before because we went up to the trailers and everything, and
Yeah, for
we've
sure.
delved into the series now, haven't we? I think that's
Oh, I think we were delving into the series even while
yeah.
we were into
Well,
the
all
series.
of our listeners who stick with us all the way through know that we have discussed it a fair bit.
Oh, for sure. Like, what do you think? I'm gonna go into the mystery box
Oh,
stuff because I don't think in Tolkien's writing he ever really like sets up a twist or some sort of massive surprise. I think the closest
yeah,
he comes to doing it is when there's like mention of a white wizard in Fangorn.
yeah, I suppose
And
so.
like you naturally think Saruman and it gives Gandalf's reveal a bit more weight to it, I guess. I think the closest
Yeah,
the Jackson film came to like doing this like surprise element storytelling was that they had a white wizard show appear before the like Gimli, Aragorn, and Legolas, and then cut. And then you're like, well, is it Saruman or what? Who is it? Mate?
yeah.
And it's
I like what they did with the film, didn't they? Because they got Christopher Lee's voice as well and dubbed it over with
yeah,
Ian McKellen's. I thought that was very cool. Um, but yeah, I guess there's not many mysteries and stuff. I guess there's the bit when at Helm's Deep, I suppose.
mm,
Well, I guess when Gandalf and Éomer arrive.
I
I
think that's
guess
like more of a Deus Ex Machina, which Tolkien
yeah,
does a bit. I think he sort of
yeah,
gives his machinas a bit more like context.
I think so. Yeah, I guess there's also like the Corsair ships as well, isn't there? I suppose.
Yeah,
Um, and I guess the Eagles if you want. But yeah, there is yeah the context Deus Ex Machina. But I don't think there's anything like plot twist.
yeah. But in Rings of Power, they're all about that. Like you know
Yeah,
something off is something off. There can't talk anymore. This
good
is
for a
what
podcast.
Rings of Power does to you. It's shit dialogue just seeps into your own consciousness, and you can't talk like a proper human anymore. Just going around saying, I am good. You go shit in a Tolkien adaptation.
Oh, I forgot about that.
I know, right? Durin
Yeah,
nearly swore, fuck the mystery box. We're going on to dialogue because fuck that.
mystery box rubbish. Who cares? Dialogue also rubbish. Who cares?
Exactly. Like you said, like with the breaking of the first silence quote, there are
Mm,
some legitimately good Tolkienian pieces of dialogue, but they
yeah,
ruined that with
yeah.
Gandalf, not Gandalf, quoting Groot, Durin nearly swearing, and like the Numenorians going up, the sea is always right. The fuck kind of motto is that? Did fucking Arian come up with that, or what? Because she's
Yeah,
got nothing else to do. She's just going
it's
around.
yeah.
What is
Gosh,
she even? Oh my God, it's already devolved into complete.
it's not. It's very cheap writing. That's all it like. And I think it's also not giving the audience much credit that they feel like it almost feels dumbed down. Um, this is me vaguely remembering it, so I can't remember if it is or not. But like the Numenor stuff and Isildur and his mates felt very just like I don't know college guys, like 21st century chat. That's all that felt like. Um, it felt like the elves as well were like trying too hard with the dialogue to make them sound very grandeur and elvish, but then
Yeah,
coming across as very corny and very forced and not like natural. Like I don't know if it's also I guess some of the gravitas of the actors, I guess as well, because I guess you're coming from like Hugo Weaving and Kate Blanchett and Liv Tyler and stuff. who you just believe are elves when they're just on screen, I suppose, and the way they do their lines is brilliant. But yeah, I think it is most just the dialogue and writing is like
Yeah. I mean, I think
bit
you
no
look at
good.
the actors in the films as well. I think a lot have come from like theatre background,
Yeah, Shakespearean, definitely.
like Ian McKellen, obviously. I think Ian Holm,
Yeah,
sure, and Ian Holm was in another Lord of the Rings adaptation
yeah, I know.
in the like BBC radio.
Yeah, yeah, the
So,
adaptation.
yeah, but there's not a lot of. I think a lot of these actors, as well as they've done, they are like mostly TV film
Yeah,
focused,
yeah.
and like it's just a different medium as well. Like it comes across more as a bit soapy when they say stuff.
Fan fiction-y, that's fine. But I guess fan
Yeah.
fiction could be better. But I don't know.
I mean, I think any fan fiction would be better than what we got from it.
Oh dear, sad.
Okay, so I guess before we go on to where we would take the show or where we expect the show to go,
Yeah.
was there anything you actually liked about it?
Dwarf storyline for the most part was fun.
Mhm.
I think Elrond, Durin were good. Um, Elven dude guy in Southlands was pretty good character. Um, some of the cinematography I thought was very good. I liked the prologue. Um, I feel like when I watched prologue, apart from like little tiny little girl Galadriel, I wasn't fond of that much. But like some of the flashback sequences, I thought were great, like the Shadow of Morgoth and stuff, and
Yeah.
the Fell Beasts, like um, taking down some eagles. Um, that shot of Sauron with the army, I thought was really cool. Like, like some of the stuff they do looked great, but then some of it just looked bad. I don't know. There's bits I enjoyed and bits I could see potential in, but I think it was just a very disappointing when you go in expecting so much, I suppose. Not necessarily that you go in expecting it to be good, but
Mhm.
you go in expecting like Tolkien-esque things and you don't really get them. Um,
I mean, I
what
think
about
in a
you?
way the prologue kind of hurt it in that
Yeah.
sense because they really nailed the design of like the Morgoth
Hmm.
shadow, for example, or
The trees.
like that weird floaty red scene, which I assume was the War of Wrath or the
Yeah.
I think they because they got that almost spot on.
Yeah.
You're raising expectations for the rest of the show, or like you're setting a theme or a atmosphere that you're not gonna really come back on.
Can't live up to it.
No. But like yeah, the practical effects was pretty cool. Like
Yeah, I
the
liked it
orc,
when you yeah.
yeah, the
Mhm.
orcs were dope. I think that one warg we saw was a bit weird, but
Of the wargs. Yeah, the orc. I enjoyed
yeah,
going back and seeing the practical effect orcs
yeah,
after
they were
being burned from the Hobbit. It's was good to see the real practical effects come again. I thought, yeah, there's that episode in the Southlands, isn't there, where there's a little
mhm.
tiny little skirmish thing. It's not a war, is it? But like the little battle there is like good, and it feels like sometimes there may be stakes, even though no characters no die in this series. Um, which is my biggest bugbear in most shows. Like it never feels like there's a stakes or anything feels like there's um really any. Again, it comes when you're doing a prologue, isn't it? Because you know what's going to happen to the main important characters, but it's sort of like I can't really. It doesn't. I don't feel like there's any point me getting invested in some of these characters because I know there's going to be no harm coming to them. Like,
Mhm.
but yeah. Um, but it did. Other than the prologue, little glimpses. What did you enjoy?
Like the general relationship, like you said, with Elrond and Durin.
Yeah,
Um, I think the initial setup of the Harfoots was quite good. I really liked
sure.
the culture they
Yeah,
set up before they did like more with the Harfoots and
until it carried on the entire
ruined them.
season.
I I think it was a misstep completely just having them in. They only had
Yeah,
the
pointless.
Harpers to like have like more casual understanders of Tolkien's world understand that this is a Tolkien adaptation,
Yeah,
that this
and
is
not just a
real.
YA thing. Yeah,
Exactly. I guess their introduction was pretty cool. Like the pilgrimagey, travel stuff is a pretty unique way to
yeah, I
bring
think
them
so.
in. Um, I think the music was pretty solid as well. I don't think it
Mostly, yeah,
like it was good. It didn't hit me as much as I think it like stuck with others.
yeah.
I think a lot of people really like the music. It's and I think I'm in like a minority of that. It just didn't hit
It
me.
was fine. It
Yeah,
did a job. I think it's very rare nowadays. I think nowadays when I think you really come across a TV or film soundtrack, you're like, wow, like no, I can't, I couldn't really tell you other than for me would be like Last Kingdom. I can't really think of any soundtrack that I've gone like, I would like to go listen to that outside the show, please. Like, I I struggle. Like it to me, it's just like I don't know if that's just a thing because of the composing or whether it's so like overstuffed. There's another adaptation I'm going to talk about, or sometimes it's just too loud and overpowering in a scene, and it's trying to be what it's not. Um, I, I don't know. It was fine. Like I thought the intro was a bit like all right as well. Like I don't think it was anything special. I thought it was unique-ish, but I'm like, it's fine.
I mean, I think the intro is another thing that sort of hampers the show in itself by getting Howard Shaw
Yeah,
to
exactly.
do the intro, which I think sounds quite similar to the Rivendell theme
Yeah,
from the
yeah,
trilogy. Like they want this show to be detached from the
yeah,
Jackson films, yet they are using so much from those films. They're
yeah.
getting the composer back to do the original theme, which sounds like a song
I know.
in the films. They get John Howe back, who did concept art on the films, and like use his design for the Balrog, which we've
Yeah,
not even talked about, just showing up for a second,
just cause.
implying that it should have a role to play in another episode to come, and then
Yeah,
doesn't. Here's
no.
a Balrog for you. And like,
So you can use it in the trailer. That's why.
yeah, like they want this show to be it. There's they've made the show codependent on the film,
Yeah, yeah,
and it
exactly.
can't live on its own anymore because they,
Yeah. This show wouldn't exist if the films didn't come out. I know it's very obvious to say, but like this show would not exist in the way it exists if Peter Jackson released those films 20 years ago.
we wouldn't be doing this podcast episode specifically if this show was not called
Yeah,
Lord of the Rings. Dot dot
yeah.
dot. That's
IPL special.
I'm so excited for the blood that's going to be boiling.
I didn't even realize it was Oak Falls. That's a very really good idea. Um, yeah. The other thing was like what to expect to come, wasn't it? What's next?
Yeah, that's really good. I just scrolled to my notes on what we think's going to happen. So
Um,
where I think the one
are we
I
saying
would
what we think is going to happen or what we want to happen?
I think let's go with what we want first. So start on
Uh,
raising our own expectations and then just drag them
Because yeah,
away.
my problem is like what I want is not what they're going to write, but I also
Exactly.
don't know what I want because what I want wasn't what season one was. So I'm like, why would I want anything continuation from that? Um, I would really pull it back, draw it back, like I was saying before, like condense the storylines as much as you possibly can. Have a real kind of solid theme focus. Like I would be very tempted to not have Sauron in it at all until maybe like the last two episodes or something, when he then comes back and it's you don't have to see him do all the stuff behind the scenes and him like I'm making Barad-dûr, look at me go like you can just you can hear like oh there's you know I don't know shadow a shadow to the east or whatever that kind of stuff and you can hear like there can be rumors, but you're hearing the same rumors as the characters are, and like you don't really know what's going on with Sauron, which could lead you into Sauron being another character in the series because everyone's expecting Halbrand Sauron, but you could have another character in it who is Sauron in a different disguise, and then that's if you want to do mystery box, that's hiding something in a plain sight, I suppose. But I wouldn't really have any Sauron in it until the end, and I think he's more of a threat when you don't. It's not in your face what he's doing,
Like
and then it's
literally in the books.
yeah, 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 yeah. Um, it's almost like it makes sense, and then it gives you time to let other characters breathe and stuff. And you're with Galadriel as a character, not her as the entire time being like, I need to find Sauron. What's going on? Let her be Galadriel a bit, and let her find a following, and let her find a place. Maybe find a Celeborn. um, um, uh, and you can actually make these characters feel a bit more real, I suppose, because it's always the first season was just so hampered with like who is Sauron. We know who Sauron is now.
Yeah.
We know he's about. We know he's doing stuff. Let him do his stuff, and then you can have a big two-part finale or something where you can maybe see him in Sauron form or something. I don't know. Um, it's, I guess that's all I really have because I'm struggling because I would bin a lot of it. I would bin a lot of Numenor now for now because I don't think you need it at this stage. Like you said, like, but the issue is because you've got people like Isildur about Isildur dead because you know Isildur is going to cross a path with Halbrand, and that's going to be so annoying
I hadn't even considered that. Like I was
because
just
he's yeah
thinking of the possibility of Halbrand Sauron going to the east and like corrupting Cumul the Easterling and like crossing paths with a couple of others of characters that we've met before,
yeah
who I assume are also going to go to the east.
yeah.
Wait, I can definitely see Gandalf and Nori running into Halbrand.
Halbrand or Isildur, but Isildur 1,000,000%
Mhm.
is going to interact with Halbrand 100% because then they're going to build that up, and that's Isildur chopping off. Then there's going to be like context him chopping off his finger and so I don't care. You don't need that. So that's what's going to happen because they wouldn't have left a Isildur there if that wasn't going to happen. Um, but yeah, I
But
would if you didn't have that whole if Isildur had gone back on the boat and he was in Numenor, you could quite easily leave Numenor to stew a little while. They've lost loads of people, loads of their fighters because Galadriel forced them to go to the Southlands and do this fight, and then Mount Doom's gone off, and
mhm.
you can then build up some resentment of the elves that way. Um, and again, let them stew like Sauron is stewing. So you can then isolate the elves a bit, feel like they are outcasts in Middle Earth.
Mhm.
They're not really wanted by anyone, especially not dwarves, not the men. Um, but I just think they've just backed themselves into a corner where I don't really know where an interesting storyline is.
I mean, it's very weird that the first rings of power they made were the three elven rings
Yeah, like,
because
yeah.
they are the three rings that alerted them to Sauron making the One Ring, but
Hmm.
they don't have the nine rings
Yeah,
being
like,
made for the Nazgul. They don't have the seven for the dwarves. I don't know how they resolve that at all because like Sauron and Celebrimbor made those
yeah,
together. Sauron
yeah,
put his corruption energy, whatever you want to call it,
yeah.
into those rings. So if Celebrimbor makes them on his own, the fall of the uh, kings of men aren't going to make sense. If Sauron
No,
does
not
it
at all.
himself, it's just like, well, why did he need Celebrimbor?
Heavenball then, yeah. It's like I need to learn. It's like a game quest, isn't it? Like you've now unlocked this crafting skill. Um, the only way you can make it work, which doesn't work, and again doesn't also has plot holes and mitigations, if you then introduce Anatar in the season as someone else, and then and then he also goes up to Celebrimbor like, I think we should make some other rings, and Celebrimbor's oh, that seems fine.
Yeah.
That's like
No,
it's yeah,
I think
it's
you can
mess.
possibly have Celebrimbor being really fixated and sort of addicted to the feeling he got from making the Rings of
Maybe.
Power,
Yeah.
and thereby like seeking Halbrand back out without realizing he's Sauron, because the only person that knows he's Sauron at the minute is Galadriel, and I
Yeah.
assume Halbrand, but
And I assume Elrond,
Elrond
because
knows
Elrond had the scroll as well. He picked it up and read that, and
yeah,
he felt like he vaguely knew.
he knows something is up. Like,
Also, why wouldn't Galadriel say anything? It's like,
I mean, you know that very old, I think the oldest elf in the age at the
mm,
minute, one of the wisest, one who was like taught by Amaya throughout the
mm,
whole of the first age.
mm,
Um, Apparently she could not pick up on the evil energy of Sauron for
why not?
months.
Yeah, yeah.
Apparently she was so much of a dick, the elves were like, we're going to send you back to the west. Shut up, go
Wow.
away.
I love that it took her to read a friggin' scroll. I can't remember what it was. There
I
was something
don't,
specific, wasn't there,
I,
in the final episode where he was like fixated about the rings or whatever. And then she's like, "Oh, wait a minute! This person that I've trusted and I've literally ridden all the way here on horseback, even though he's practically dying. I don't. It's all annoying me now. What's going to happen season two? They've got some new cast, and I think there's some good cast people that they've announced. I can't remember their names off the top of my head, but
there is Kieran Hines, who was, if you're going to compare to Game of Thrones, he was in Game of
yeah,
Thrones. He was Mance
yeah,
Rayder. They've
yeah,
got Rory Kinnear, who was in
yeah,
a few Bond movies. He was,
yeah. He's in a lot. Yeah, he's a lot
yeah,
of British kind of stuff, definitely.
yeah. I
Um,
think he was really good as Frankenstein's monster in Penny Dreadful. So they've got some good actors for the next
yeah.
season. I don't think they're going to utilize them very well.
I would doubt it.
I
I would doubt it. I would
could
doubt
not
it.
tell you who they're going to play.
Exactly, because then you got introducing more characters on the overstuffed thing you've already got. That's the problem. Like you've got characters that we already don't care about, and then you're going to introduce more characters. And I think actors that you probably should have had in from the beginning, if you really wanted to hit home with some real experience in there. But then who are they going to? I don't know.
I'm just really excited for the next part of Arian's rom-com with Barazon's son.
I really can't
I
wait for that. That's some
honestly,
inspired writing.
I know I planned this kind of surprisingly, but I wish we aren't doing it now.
I don't know. For me, I think I had my Harry Potter rant a few episodes ago,
Yeah,
and that was cathartic because I can basically let it go and put it to rest. But this has still got stuff to come.
yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of good segue. Are you gonna watch season two?
I will, yeah. Um,
Or
but I think I'm just going
is
to
it
going to
like
pick one of us.
more? Is it more like out of interest? Is it? I don't know.
Mild,
Because I don't
vague
think.
curiosity.
Yeah, I don't think either of us would be watching out of enjoyment of the show.
I think so.
I'm much closer to I'm not going to watch this anymore,
Oh,
which I'm
it's
sure
definitely
the listeners
curiosity.
will like revel in because they don't get to know Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Oh, it's tricky. Oh, I will because I
Okay.
need to know. I can't not know. But then I also don't think I'll be watching. It's like because I carried on watching Doctor Who even through the Chris Chibnall era, even though I hated pretty much every second of it. But I'm like, I feel like I have to.
I
So I
think
feel
that's
like
a
I'll be the
little bit
same with this.
different with you as well because Doctor Who is very much a big fandom and
Mm,
like universe and just
yeah,
whole thing. That's your main show. It's the
it's
main.
all interested. Yeah, but whilst this is just a new shtick with a license thing put on it,
This is just a YA
fantasy vibe.
magic
Yeah,
fantasy with Lord of the Rings as a
yeah,
title
pretty much.
mask.
We love it.
You want to go into your adaptation? Like, I don't know if it's
Yeah,
comparisons or was it
I
things that
I
work
guess
well and
it's
why?
comparatively. So I think most direct one I guess at the same time as House of Dragon that came out at the same time as Rings of Power.
and I've only just recently watched. I'm also in a new location, by the way. I'm watching on YouTube. Um, I guess you know, House of Dragon was battling with Rings of Power, and I think one is far superior now in terms of storytelling. It doesn't have to be something it isn't. And although I think budget wise, sometimes House of Dragon falls down a bit, I think storytelling it really does, in my opinion. And I think that's what's good about straight adaptations. But I mean, I think recently, I think for me, there's two good adaptations. There's first was Dark Materials,
Mhm.
which is based on a trilogy from Philip Pullman. Um, and they did 3 seasons, basically a book a season. And I think it's probably one of the most faithful adaptations I've seen. I don't think there's really actually much that deters from the book to screen. And it deals with some quite like high level, I guess, fantasy stuff and religious stuff, and you know, it's things like gods and heaven and stuff like that, and interdimensional worlds and stuff like that. And it's all done very realistically and done really well. And something that you I think sometimes is difficult to imagine on screen was done very seamlessly, basically because they followed what was the book, and the book works, here it is. And it's like, well, good. That's what I want to see. And I think I think it's quite similar to Last of Us as well, which does that, I think, very comparatively with the game. And I just think if it's not broke, don't fix it. Other things as well, Last Kingdom, which I think is now overtaken Doctor Who as my fave show, that's based off 13 books. And they've done 5 seasons and finishing it with a film on my birthday, which is very nice of them. Um,
It's mad that it's overtaking Doctor Who as well. I didn't think it
yeah,
was ever
yeah. I
going to be
mean,
a
it might change a
possibility.
little bit now because I'm maybe in a bit of the jaded Doctor Who era after the last 4 years. Uh, but I just love it. I just think I love historical fiction. I think it's a really interesting point of time, and I think the characters are really done. And I'm reading the books, and I should have finished the books by the time the film comes out. There's 13 of them, and you can definitely see that it's not really a strict. The first few seasons, I think, it's awkward because you can't really get 13 books into 5 seasons in a film,
Yeah.
because they cross, I think, about 40 years in the books, roughly, um, and loads of historical time points. But you can see the changes that they make in the show to benefit the because it's this is the show version. There's the adaptation version of the TV, and then the books are the books. They're two separate things, but the same story. But you can understand decisions they make to change it, and you can be on. I think some people may not be, but I can be like, I respect that decision. Why you've done that, because it wouldn't make sense to say let's park this story for 15 years and come back later. Just do it now so you can move on to the stuff that makes sense afterwards. I don't mind that. Like I think the first 2 seasons are 4 books, like basically halfway in the middle of a series is the cutoff point for one book, and then goes into another. And so I think the first 2 seasons have two very different tones, especially season 2. It starts off with one particular arc, and then it very much feels like it jumps another series effectively from, I think, episodes like 5, 6, 7, 8, and it feels like you're watching a series 3 rather than still series 2. Which I guess is kind of similar to what we're saying Rings of Power could have done with Numenor and things like that. You're not just expecting the audience to, you know, guide the audience along. You're being like, no, this is like 8 years later. Deal with it. I'm like, okay, I will. Then season 3 is basically all one book, I think, and then 4 and 5 go back to kind of merging all together. But I think it does it in a really interesting way, by not using all the books and all the stuff that you have to, but basically taking like the best bits. And I think it's different to like Game of Thrones, which didn't have all the books done. The like final Last Kingdom book came out in 2020, so they were then able to go to, I think, Netflix, who produced it, and be like, the final book's out now. Can we finish it, please? Here's the stuff, we can do it. And it's like, it's nice. They'll from what I know of what the film is going to be about, it's very much what the book I am now reading, which is exciting. So I don't really know what my point is, but I don't think you necessarily have to
straight adapt everything from page to screen. I think there's sometimes you don't have to be ultra massively faithful. But you know, I think it works well with like Dark Materials, works well with Last of Us. You can see that Last Kingdom is very faithful for the most part, but then it's like we can use our creative license because we know where the story is going and we know that this is important, this can lead into this, and it still works well. I think those are my main three good examples that I've enjoyed. One I haven't enjoyed, which I think almost kind of rivals Rings of Power.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of Shadow and Bone. Have you heard of Shadow and Bone, Jamie?
I think I've watched the first season.
Yeah, have you?
I think so.
Yeah, it's a YA fantasy on Netflix. Um, it is adapted from basically 5 books. You've got a trilogy first, which is what Shadow and Bone is based off. They're by Lee Bardugo, I think. So you've got Shadow Bone trilogy, and then you've got a second set of books, a duology, which is called Six of Crows and The Crooked Kingdom, which I've read. I've read those two, and they are brilliant. I love them. They are fantastic. They're great. I would recommend them time and time again. I've not read Shadow and Bone, nor do I want to after watching. Basically, what's my problem is it's very difficult without spoilers, and I think the second season's out now. But what they've done, which I do not understand, is first season they introduced the characters from basically the duology set of books who are called the Crows. You got Kazbreka, got Chespe, you got Inej. There's basically like what I guess a gang, I suppose, a gang of thieves. And they don't feature in the Shadow of Bone story, but they put them in the Netflix series because they know people like those books more. So let's shoehorn them in, even though it makes no sense. So they feature in the first season, which I'm like, okay, I fine, I'll allow it. Because they were just new, it was just new stuff. It's not adapting anything. It's like these are the characters. I'm like, okay, cool. They then released a second series last month, and boy howdy,
Oh, God.
I think I might be as annoyed at that as I was at Rings of Power or as you were at Rings of Power. Because basically, I don't know if you're going to watch it. It doesn't really matter about spoilers. Spoilers for Shadow and Bone, I guess. But what
It's
they
happening
do,
now.
they take because the duology I've got is great. It's a perfect. It's what I think is a really good advertisement for duologies because mostly you see like a trilogy is the go-to or a single book, but the fact it's 2 books, I'm like perfect. That's enough story which you can fit in between two. What they do in season 2, in the first 4 episodes of Shadow and Bone, which you've still got the Shadow and Bone nonsense going on in the background, which is bad. Love to everyone involved. But and in the first 4 episodes, it is very, I'll call them the Crows. The Crows is their crew name, whatever. It is very Crows central. Again, because you're like, these are the most interesting characters. This is the most interesting story. These are people you actually want to be invested in. But
Oh, okay.
they do the plot of the second book. And then they go on a stupid little side quest, which doesn't happen in the second half of the series with the stupid Shadow and Bone storyline, which is rubbish. And then the series ends on a cliffhanger, the cliffhanger being the beginning of the first book.
Wait, how does that? But
And I'm like, and now they're like, oh, we want to do a spin-off with just the Crows. I'm like, well, obviously you should have done that at the freaking beginning. But now, like, how you've done the second book. The second book is done. That's finished. You've reached. You can't go to conclusion. You're now going back. You've introduced everyone. You've got to their heightened their characteristics and their character traits and their character arcs, and now you're going to go back when they've not done all that. And I'm like, why have you done this?
that's such an odd decision because you're missing out on complete a character growth from the
Yeah,
first book.
yeah,
You're just jumping into where they are as characters.
yep,
The second book,
yep,
which
yeah,
must be very jarring and stupid to watch on a series. You're
yeah.
like, oh,
Because it'd
you're
it'd
just
been a
showing that
long,
now.
yeah, it had been a long time since I'd read the books, and it was sort of starting the first 4 episodes, whatever. It was like it was treading on ground. I'm like, oh, this is very familiar. They're doing a book. That's exciting. That's good. And then it only twigged to me later on, like, this is very familiar because it's the last book I read. And I remember this now, and it's like they're supposed to be a big jail heist where they rescue one of the characters from a place called Hellgate. And I'm like, oh, they're going to do this. They never get around to it. I'm like, when are they going to do this? Why not doing this? It's like, oh wait, no, this is book 2. This is great. I genuinely cannot understand the decision making, and they are such good characters, and they've cast them so well in the series. I think they're brilliant. Everyone they've got is fantastic, but it doesn't make me excited at all for a spin-off show because it's like, well, you're gonna do the second book again? Like, you've done it. I don't understand, but so that's when I think its adaptation's done badly. Last Kingdom good, Dark Materials good, Last of Us good, Shadow and Bone bin. So maybe we'll have a full episode on that at some point. But I would recommend reading Six of Crows, Crooked Kingdom. They're fantastic, and I'm very upset that they've done such an injustice.
Oh, I love that. I mean,
But the adaptation they did for the first half of the second season of the second book is very good. It's very faithful adaptation, but why it's there, God only knows.
it's such a strange decision. Like,
Bizarre.
I only remember bits of the first season, and I think the crows, they are the bits I remember because they're the
Yeah.
interesting
100%.
characters.
They've got personality. They've got
Yeah,
personality.
exactly.
They've got interactions. They actually make sense as human beings. Everyone else is rubbish. It's just very generic YA fantasy, which is fine if you want it. But I think when you've got interesting characters like the crows who are basically like in the Gotham of this world, and they feel like almost like, I don't know, a Batman gang or something in this, but with a real dark side to them and a dark streak, especially Kaz Brekker. And I think you get a lot of that in season 2, and it's interesting, it's good. And then it's just coupled for some reason with this other storyline, which it doesn't fit. And then you put them in this storyline with which kind of this world-ending plot, and it's like, no, that's not their deal. They're very small scale, and like, yeah, angry.
I mean, I think that's where we should be going with like fantasy and superhero
Yeah, 100%.
genre. It
Smaller.
should be going to a smaller core, like smaller issues. We've had like world-ending
Yeah, 100%.
stories before, and it's just been overdone to death.
Massively.
I think
I think they had a real opportunity with this to do something really different and kind of almost like underground, I suppose. And they just, I don't know whether they had like mitigations that they had to adapt Shadow and Bone to adapt the Crows. I don't know whether that was in the contract potentially with when they got the rights to the book, but I don't know. It says a lot that they're like, we want to do a spin off of just the Crows now. Well, it's like, well,
I mean that must have been part of the plan from the first
must
season.
be.
Like they
Yeah.
need to put them in to make like readers of both book series going, oh, if they've got the
Yeah.
crows in, that's more incentive to watch.
Yeah.
But
Bizarre.
yeah,
Bizarre.
really
It's one of the most bizarre choices
very
I think I've ever known. I think Netflix do that a lot with their adaptations. So I'm like, I'm baffled that Last Kingdom has got to a stage where I'm like still happy with it.
Like I wasn't completely aware the first season, which is the only season I've watched of Last Kingdom, was 2 books.
Yeah.
Split. So like now knowing that, I can kind of have a guess at where that split happened. I kind of appreciate the first season a bit more now because it feels like a natural sort of midpoint climax that flows through the season. You can see how that flows from a book
100%.
to another. So I think that's a creative and unconventional adaptation technique that they
Like,
for a show that I didn't really get into that much. It's something they've done quite well.
Yeah.
Like,
And
a
season
faithful-
2 is very apparent. It's very much like, okay, that's the end of that bit. That's book done. We're on to another book now. And I'm like, cool, do that. adapt the books perfectly. And if you can do that in 4 episodes, that's fine. That's basically like 4 hours.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Perfect. And like even with a very faithful adaptation, like The Last of Us, episode 3 is a complete like different direction from the game. It's the Bill and Frank storyline.
Mhm.
In the game, you actually meet
Yeah.
Bill with Joel and Ellie, and in the show, it's a love story between Bill and Frank, and I think it's one of the stronger episodes.
Oh, it's a brilliant episode. It's
It's
fantastic.
amazing. You don't expect to get that, but it's a really nice distraction. Only 3 episodes in as well, which is,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's a nice change of pace. It doesn't get you down too much with the whole post-apocalyptic stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's a story for a post-apocalyptic thing, and it works. It builds that world well.
Yeah, and honestly, season 2 is going to be mental for anyone
Yeah.
who's played the games and knows what's going.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a bit more of a butting heads between.
It's going to be interesting to see what they do, because obviously being very faithful, I'll be interested if they really stick to their guns. But we'll see. But I think what's good about that, and I think something like Last Kingdom, I suppose, when you've got creators that obviously really care about the source material and where it's come from, and what you're doing with it, and there's bits in Last of Us you just don't change. You don't even change the lines, the dialogue, because they're great. And the same with Last Kingdom to an extent. When you've got people who really care about that faithful adaptation, it works.
Yeah.
And then you got like Shadow and Bone and Rings of Power, where it's like, how can we quickly make a quick buck? And it's like, well, no good. But
I like looking at Rings of Power. I'm not sure what the situation with Shadow and Bone is, but Rings had like 2 new showrunners, completely just given $1 billion
Yeah.
show. Like compared to Last of Us, it had the game director.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
It had Ashley Johnson, who played Ellie in a small role. It had Troy Baker, who played Joel in a small role. It had a couple of other
little cameos as well.
Small roles.
Yeah.
It had the same actor who played Marlene in the game playing her in the show. Like, it's
really
collective effort to just bring the game to a new audience in a different medium.
Yeah, really respect it.
Yeah, it's one of the best shows I've been in a long time. Yeah. It's probably the best video game adaptation there is.
Oh, it has to be, hands down. It's up against Halo. What? No, it's great. It's perfect. So yeah, speaking of,
have you got cricket news then? Is that segue?
So welcome move to it's just cricket. I've not really actually got any news. But I think we might as well wrap it up, because we've done it to death, but franchise cricket has almost made me feel very jaded with cricket. I'm like, it feels like it's happening all the time. Like, you had the WPL, which happened, which is great for the women's game. That's fantastic. And like people like Nat Skiver and Izzy Wong, from England, performing on such a big stage, and you had a great crowd in India, and it looked amazing. But I just really struggled to be invested, because you got that on, and then coupled with that, you got the PSL happening at the same time. I'm just like, it's just too much. And they've also got there's a really, really good T20 series that just finished between South Africa and West Indies. And I think in the second game, was the highest ever scoring T20 game. I think West Indies got like 250 or something, and then South Africa chased them down.
How? What?
Let me see if I can quickly find the scorecard. But
that's completely mad, because I had no idea it was even going on. Like, which is
exactly.
You imagine, like, with so much cricket going on, you'd be more aware of it happening. But
but I mean, that really just passed me by. And like, I know if it was in the past, I would have been really into this series. I would have cared and watched it and loved it. But I just couldn't, even when the highlights came, I'm like, I can't be bothered. I'm like, that's bad. But yeah, so first T20, West Indies won by 3 wickets. It was only 11 over game. South Africa got 131. West Indies chasing down with 3 balls remaining. But yeah, it was the second game. So West Indies got 258 for 5 off their 20 overs. And then South Africa chased them down with 7 balls to spare.
With
what a game. Mental.
As well.
Yeah.
They had
what an amazing game. Yeah. But West Indies then won the final game. So they won that series 2-1, which is a really good result for them, West Indies cricket. But that's a series I would have loved to watch and really, savoured. But I just feel so burnt out. And then next week, county championship starts. I'm like, I've kind of like, I think I've stopped myself from watching anything since the Test series finished or the one-day series finished against Bangladesh. I think just to try and give myself a break before this starts, because you've got 2 months of the tournament that will not be named and this special, and it's just it's a struggle. But I can give you some quick county championship news if you would like it.
I would. I just wanted to say, like, that's the whole point. You start to miss a thing when you don't have it. So if you continually have cricket going on,
yeah,
you're not.
100%. Yeah,
you're gonna
exactly.
feel diluted by it. You're gonna feel like you'll love it less. Like,
yeah,
a TV show isn't on all year round unless it's like
yeah, yeah,
but like waiting for it to come back around again is part of the
yeah,
enjoyment
exactly.
of the show, or the next film in a series or whatever, or next book. Like if
You
we
got it all the time. Who cares?
exactly like we're going to see one of the Ashes
Yeah,
games in June, and I think
June. Yeah, 30th of June.
if we were like constantly watching cricket, that would make going to that game a bit
Less of an event. Yeah,
like
I agree.
fans need the break as much as players do, so we can feel revitalized into like supporting the sport. Otherwise, it's
So
just
otherwise,
gonna
yeah, and
be a bit
yeah,
dull and boring. And it's cricket. It
yeah,
sometimes it is a bit dull and boring if it's not
yeah.
basketball. If
It
it's
can't.
basketball,
It can't.
must be
Every
amazing.
game can't be that T20 series with West Indies, South Africa, and I feel like every time they're trying to force that. But if you hadn't have had a series or tournament going on at the same time, but I can understand that. I'm happy for the WPL to happening. That's important to happen for the women's game, 100%. But it's just all the other stuff going on around it, like the PSL. I feel like I've seen more cricket in Pakistan this winter than I've ever seen like anywhere else. But like it's just franchise cricket just feels like it's the TikTok of cricket. It's just always happening. It's basically always done for clicks. Like Shaheen Shah Afridi got like 50 off 20 balls in the final. I'm like, okay, I'll forget about it next week. I mean, I so let's
It's
talk
just not
about
cricket on TikTok.
yeah, follow us, please. But you've got another franchise starting for the US, which apparently the ECB are trying to block English contracted players going to. But I think you can get trouble now because I think a franchise is going to be offering reportedly Jason Roy £300,000 or dollars to go play in that franchise competition
It's not like
over
Roy would
like
be
the
a big
Blast.
loss for us anyways.
But then you get that awkward thing of being like, well, you let that player go. What about this player going? And it's suddenly like you're getting people drawn away from like the Blast and the English summer. And then where do you get these players built and developed from? We've done it. This is old ground.
It's just a weird. America is not a crickety country.
Not at all.
Like it's a very strange place to try and build the sport. Why not
Yeah.
try and build the sport in the already established lesser cricketing
100%.
country?
100%. Well, they don't have money. It all comes down to money. Woo, because it's owned by the IPL owners mostly, this US series, because it's like the Mumbai Indians, New York, or whatever. It's like, what is that name? Anyway, county championship news, and then we'll wrap it up. So starts next week. I think the only things to note, Crawley got a duck in his warm up today.
Nice, good. Well and truly.
Called good start. Meanies go as you are. Archer is probably not going to play any county championship red ball before the Ashes, as confirmed by Paul Farbrace. So he's got 2 months at the tournament that must not be named. Might play in the Ireland test potentially. Depends on his fitness. Depends if he gets in the team. I think he probably does. Stokes is only playing as a batter in a tournament that must not be named. He's not going to be bowling. Apparently, had an injection on his knee after New Zealand tour. I don't know how bad that is. People were saying that he shouldn't be going to the IPL because of it. I'm like, well, it's his money, it's his career. Let him do what he wants.
That's the point we've got to.
Yeah,
we just don't care anymore. It's their choice.
I mean, it should be like, does Stokes need, I don't know, a month off and then play 2 games for Durham? Is that good preparation for the Ashes? Or, just play with decent players and, the tournament's not been named? I think it doesn't matter. I think it really doesn't matter anymore. I think they're good enough to adapt, especially with Bazball. The final thing, Bairstow probably going to be returned to action in May. and has bequested that he keeps in his Yorkshire games to try and push his case to be keeper in the Test summer, which I think was probably expected. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes alongside Folkes. I mean, Bester will be playing in Division 2 of Yorkshire, I believe. Folkes Division 1. Don't think it makes any difference, but quite interesting that he wants to keep rather than just play as a sole batter. Obviously, see that's his way back in. I'm guessing that's might have been told that as well.
Yeah, I was wondering if he's been said like Brooke has played so well. The only position we could possibly put you in is as keeper.
Yeah. So I don't think that's
It's not surprising.
I'm happy. Yeah.
It's one of the few options that would have seen him come back in. So.
Exactly. And I don't think he's going to open. I reckon they will drop Crawley. I'm just not 100% sure who they'll bring in just yet. And I don't think I can't see them opening with Bairstow. As fun as Bazball that would be, I think it's unlikely. I think he's probably going to keep, and you have someone maybe like Ben Compton come in and open in the Test team. But yeah, I think otherwise that is about it. Unless you got anything else.
I think there is one match in particular I think we want to preview quickly.
Yes, we were going to quickly preview that very quickly. We have started a team called the Wicket Whippets. So quickly. We've got our first game on the 14th of April, my birthday, which is going to be a T20. Hopefully weather will be good. Hopefully light will be good for an evening T20 in April. Going to be touch and go. Might be 10 overs aside. But yeah, basically it's just going to be a team of vibes, I think. I basically started it. Didn't really start. I was just netting with a friend in London the last few years and thought it might be fun if we can see if anyone else is interested in netting as well. Got about 5 or 6 people, be like, oh, maybe we could grab more people and yourself involved, be like, oh, maybe we could play some games, and here we are. I think basically it's just a team for people who, can't be committed to a club but just want to play and enjoy playing with friends and people and stuff. And I think that's the most important thing. I think cricket, I love club cricket. It's a vibe, but I think it takes up all your summer. Like Saturdays and Sundays every week. If you want to play league games, you want to make a difference to the team. It's all day on Saturday, and that's all your summer, and that's gone. And if you've got all your friends and you've got family at that club, then fine. That's makes complete sense. But for me personally, I found it difficult to detach myself from my social life, and just life in general, and spend basically 6 hours of a day in a field with people I get on with but not necessarily friends with, and I feel like, who am I doing this for? So I think for me it was like, I want to make a team of just mates and people I can enjoy playing cricket with and just enjoy the game, because I always felt that's too much pressure all the time. So I think it'll be fun. Are you looking forward to it?
I am. I'm like equally excited and nervous, which I think is a good balance anyway.
I think so. Yeah.
Like, it's very different to like a football season where it's only a couple of hours a week, maybe an hour of training midweek. Like even a 2020 game, which is what we're going to be playing, is going to be like 3 or 4 hours.
3, I think 3. We'll try and get through as quick as we can.
I mean, I don't think we're going to try, but I think we will.
yeah.
But yeah, it's just going to be nice to play without any expectations. Just
exactly. Like, if we're 50 or out, we're 50 all out. Who cares?
Exactly. Like, we've played at the park with our mates and they're not very good. So it'll be nice to like have a bit more of a challenging game, but still that sort of vibe going around.
I think so. Yeah. And just to play without, it is almost Bazballish. It's to play without fear, and it's just to play to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to see what happens when you have that, and you've not got that peer pressure, you've not got that expectation. You're just going in to have fun and just have a good time with your friends. And I think that probably will bring the best out of some players as well. But it's going to be an interesting ride. I'm going to try and cover some of it on our pods and socials and stuff. So if you want to follow us on.
Oh wait, I think seeing as I did the intro, I should also do. No, you should do the outro. I forget how it happens. I was driving the podcast for so long. I've taken my eye off.
And I got angry at Shadow Empire. So you want to follow us at Just Not Crickball on Twitter, on Instagram, and TikTok, and YouTube,
See,
everywhere,
it's kind
everywhere.
of difficult to remember when you're like on the spot and
everywhere.
whatever.
But yeah, I'll be posting everywhere and everyone about our games and stuff. Try and do some photos, some videos, things like that. I'll be doing more tweets, I guess, about favorite cricketers. We had a lot of that, I guess, if you want to get involved. And we'll be back at some point, maybe with a post-match review or match preview. I don't know, something.
All we can say is we promise it won't be any more Rings of Power.
It's done.
We've
It won't
retired
be an
it for the
IPL
pod.
special either.
Oh no, the IPL special is coming. This might be
Yeah,
an
it's still
example, but the IPL special will come.
Yeah. So if you're if you're waiting for the IPL special, I'll leave a timestamp with this. So this is the IPL special segment. Next episode. Kohli's pretty good, isn't he?
I know, right? Dennis to Whippets.
Go on the whips. All right. Well, peace.
Bye.
Bye.